All right, welcome everybody. Mike here again. Now, apparently, I forgot to record the introduction for this video. So the plan for today, I have a fairly large property. The gate is almost 1/8 of a mile from the house. And as of today, there's no way to communicate from the gate area to the house. So as long as we've met in advance and you know the code, you can let yourself in. But if there's a vendor, if, the Amazon delivery person has a question, there's literally no way to reach anybody at the house. So we are going to be adding a doorbell camera. Now, the problem is, I don't know which way to point here, where this little talking head is going to go, but hopefully, as you can see, the existing keypad, it's nice, it works great, but there's nowhere to mount anything on it. So we're going to be fabricating a whole new support structure that's going to bolt to the back of it to mount our new doorbell camera. And this is the goal. So hang on, I'm going to take you through the process. So I started with a crude little mock-up in an old CAD package that I use. Now, of course, you could do this on paper, just with a pencil, maybe some graph paper. But I just wanted to have a rough idea of what we were shooting for here. And from that, I was able to extrapolate all the dimensions that I was going to need and then transfer those to the steel. All right, so we have our 16 gauge sheet metal that we're going to use. This is just picked up at any home center. Honestly, would have preferred something a little bit thicker, maybe a little plate, but I didn't feel like doing a run out to Metal Mart, so this is gonna do. Now, I am in the process of setting up this new shop, and believe it or not, I don't have a compass here. All of that is, some of my measuring equipment is still back in my old shop. However, if you get creative, you can always find something. A roll of tape, a paint can. In our case, we need to dimension it's exactly 6 1/4 inches. Say that one out. 6 1/4 inches in diameter. And it just so happens, because I'm a pack rat, I have some old coffee cans lying around. And if we take the lid off, it's exactly what we need. So, don't have a compass, but we get creative and we will still pull it off. So I'm going to line this up. And normally I wouldn't be using a black Sharpie, but I want to make sure that everybody can see. And now I'll go to the opposite end. And then we'll just grab our straight edge. And finish it off. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to finish the circle on this lower part. Only we'll do it with a dashed line. So hopefully this will make it a little bit more clear. We still have to do some cutouts down here, but this circle is what's going to mount to the back side of the existing gate controller. So this is going to be our like a bolting surface to bolt to the back of the existing. And then up above it, we're going to be able to mount our new Reolink doorbell camera. Now notice I did leave an inch above and below. since this is a USB powered doorbell camera, I do have to be able to remove it, and it actually has to like shift and pivot a little bit. So I need that inch of space at the bottom, inch of space at the top. So I couldn't make it any more compact than that. But that's going to become our back plate. And then we are going to cut a separate piece for a shade hood. And we'll go ahead and we'll just stitch weld or tack weld that on at the very end. So hopefully finishing out that circle will help show that, okay, that's just going to be the part that you don't see. It's going to mount behind the existing gate controller. And then the rest of this will be up above the existing gate controller. All right, now there is one more feature we have to accommodate. On the back side of that existing gate controller, there's a stem or a stand that comes up and welds to it. This is going to need to slide down over that stand, that stem. So I've put a couple of little witness marks on here. I'm going to take my square. And we'll connect the dots. Oh, let's use one that lays flat. So this is going to need to be cut out as well. Now there's lots of ways you could cut this out. You could use a jigsaw. I'm not a fan of that on sheet metal. It tends to ripple the edge a little bit. If you have access to it, you could use a plasma cutter. If you have access to it, you could use a water jet, a CNC table. I'm going to go old school. We're just going to use a good old cutoff wheel with a 4.5-inch metal cutoff blade. Now, to use something like this, though, we're definitely going to glove up, put on some eye protection, and in addition to our normal eye protection, I always like to use a secondary face shield when using a cutoff disc like that. I know that a lot of people are going to make fun of me in the comments, but I spent 6 years working in a shipyard, and I have seen dozens of these cutoff wheels come apart at high speed, and they just spit pieces everywhere. So when it comes to using a cutoff wheel, I'm going to use safety glasses and the face shield with gloves. And then we're just going to go ahead and cut this notch out first. Then we'll go ahead and cut the perimeter. And then we will have the shape that we need to mount our Reolink doorbell camera. All right, I'm going to try and keep my face out of the way so you guys can see. Actually, let's see if we can get you guys a better angle. All right, I'm not sure if this is going to be better for you guys or not, but we'll give it a shot. All right, let's now try a third angle, because I'm not sure you guys can see past the blade guard. All right, well, I have you guys on the workbench now. Hopefully there isn't too much vibration. All right, so let's a little bit. This is not right, but amazing. All right, so there's a vibration. This is your app. And there we go. We'll switch from a cutting disc to a grinding disc, and we'll clean some of that up. All right, so instead of a grinding wheel, I changed my mind. I switched over to a flap disc. It's basically overlapping sandpaper in the place of a grinding disc. And that should help to deburr and clean up these sharp edges. And if you wonder why I keep ungloving and gloving, the camera controls don't work through the gloved fingers. Let's see, brute force this piece. There we go. There we go, the waste. All right, one piece down. All right, the next thing we're going to need to do is create a template for the shade shroud, the little protection shroud that's going to go above the camera doorbell. This is also, once we tack weld it on, going to add a lot more rigidity, a lot more stiffness to that relatively thin 16 gauge back panel. Now, you could obviously cut this whatever you want. You know, if you have a good pocket knife, razor knife, but if you aren't familiar with these, I love these little rotary cutters. It's like putting a zipper on cardboard. All right, so I'm just going to cut out a blank here that we'll use as that template as we mock up that shade shroud, that shade hood over the top of our doorbell cover. Let's see if I can reposition this so you guys can see better. Like I said, it's like putting a zipper on cardboard. There we go, and that should do nicely. I've got the camera here. I have the back plate that we created. Now, I do want to elevate it up just a little bit, so I just grabbed a sanding sponge. I'll drop that there. Drop our backing plate on top of the sanding sponge. That we have a little bit of hangover on the back side. I'll just set my camera there. And again, not a critical measurement. I want it to stick past our camera just a little bit. So right about there. So that's going to be my baseline. Get everything out of the way here. And now I'm just going to use my T-square. Now, if you're not familiar with these precision T-squares, they're really kind of nice. They have all these little tiny holes. So you can literally get accuracy down to about, like the 64th of an inch. You just put the T-square up against the edge, find the correct hole, put your pencil in. Unfortunately, I know that you folks won't be able to see that little pencil line. So, and this is not a critical measurement, so we're just going to wing it. right, now we have that little semicircle. I want this shroud to kind of set on the top of the existing structure for the gate keypad. So I'm just going to tuck this right up against the edge, and then I'm going to wrap it around the top. And then I'm going to use my little Sharpie and make a mark. And honestly, I'm marking this a little bit heavy. We can always trim it down when we do our first test fit with the angle grinder. But we'll make one more quick cut. Now, something else I'm going to do, I don't know if I will need this or not, but just in case, I'm going to give myself one little tiny mark right at the top center. That's the kind of datum point that often comes in handy. All right, so I've clamped our little template onto my square of sheet metal again. And it turns out our 16 gauge sheet metal is exactly 24 inches by 24 inches. And our little shroud is about 24 and 3/16 long. So hopefully you can, if I bring you in close, you can see our template's just going to hang over, I don't know, maybe an 1/8 of an inch. We're going to lose, not a big deal. I mean, again, it's a doorbell camera shroud. This is not like heavy engineering here. So it won't be quite as long as I'd hoped, but at the end of the days, it's not going to make a difference. All right, so I'm going to mark this onto the sheet metal, and then we're going to go ahead and cut this one back out. I decided to put a small taper on the very ends. Now, I've already done this on the far side. Hopefully you guys can see that. But pretty simple. I just decided to come in 1 inch from our existing line, and then go up, I believe it was 6 inches. Yep, 6 inches up. And then connect the dots. I mean, it's not like we have to cut any extra this way. It will add a little bit of visual interest. And then we'll just identify the waist. All right, so I think that's all the layout that we need. We're ready to cut the shroud out. All right, to try and make cutting a little bit easier this time, I went ahead and grabbed just a scrap of 2x4. And what I plan to do here is I'm going to take the 2x4, put it under the sheet metal, just to elevate it up off the work surface a little bit. And so that way, when I cut through the sheet metal, I'm not cutting into my bench. And then we'll see if we can just clamp this all down as a big sandwich. So hopefully we can just make one nice zippy cut. Make sure we're clear back here. Yes, we are. And then hopefully I'm not having to reposition and reclamp everything multiple times. Oh, there's our shroud shape. To make the next step just a little bit easier, we're going to come in here and I'm going to make a mark approximately every ½ inch. 4 inches from our center line. You're not locked in here. There's going to be some bending guidelines. There's a little bit of pre-bend into it, so I'm not going to brute force it by hand. We'll get a little. All right, we have our guidelines. Let me shift you guys over so you can see the vise. All right, so we've clamped our shroud piece in the vise. I've actually locked the vise right on that first guideline. And we're not going to use a lot of force here. We don't want to, put a complete super tight. We're just going to come in here and just give it a little bit of a bend. And then we'll loosen up the vise, go to the next line. And again, just a little bit of force. Not a lot. We're going to get our final shape over on when we start doing our welding. All right, and that does it. Let me zoom back out. So we definitely don't have our full horseshoe. We just wanted to get enough of a start of that curve so it's going to be real easy to just form it around the actual back plate. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are going to be asking, what rod I'm using, what's my amperage. I'm going to share that, but honestly, I almost don't want to. Because if you want to learn welding, don't try and learn from me. I am as rusty as can be. It's not one of my core skill sets. But if you need to know, I'm doing it completely wrong. I'm using E6011 stick, which in and of itself isn't that bad, but all I have on hand is some 3/32, which technically that's a little bit heavy for 16 gauge sheet metal. And I am currently running at 60 amps on my machine. I'm sure all the professional welders out there can jump in the comments and make fun of me. But that is where I'm starting out. And let's go ahead. All I'm going to do at this point, as I mentioned, we're going to be forming this around our back plate. So I do have a riser under the back plate, lifting it up off the table. I just want to put a tack or two up at the very top, the very apex of that curve. And then one by one, we'll use the ball peen hammer, we'll use the clamps. We're going to start sucking that curve in, tack, tack, tack. And we're going to just tack our way around until we have that shroud perfectly rounded and attached to that back plate. At least that's the plan. Let's see how much you guys get to laugh at me. We have the top tacked in place. Now I have a clamp in place, which has now sucked our sides in. Everything is nice and tight. Okay, after an embarrassing amount of welding, blowing holes, filling holes, grinding, welding some more, blowing more holes, filling more. After an embarrassing amount of that, we're finally at a point where I feel comfortable. We're going to slap some paint on this, put a little filler in to hide some of the larger divots, and I think we're going to be in the home stretch. So, what's the old saying? A grinder and paint makes a welder what he ain't. So let's see if we can clean this up. All right, so all right, rather than sitting here and watching paint dry, I think we're going to grab a drill, head back down to the gate, and put some mounting holes in the existing gate panel with the keypad. Well, looky here. Looks like we have some stowaways. All right, that takes care of that. All right, so now we're going to put 4 holes about here, 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 and here. That way we'll be able to through bolt to our new plate on the backside. I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a nice cascade of silver chips that are constantly falling. That's what you want to see. I know a lot of people, when they start out in their maker career, they try to, drill steel and their bits get done. Well, if your bit is skating, if it's not actually cutting, that will drill your bit faster than anything. Make sure you apply enough pressure that you see that steady stream of silver chips coming down. That means you are actually cutting. You're going to get better life out of your bits, and your holes will go a lot faster. And also, we're using 1/4" hardware, but I'm starting with a 5/32 drill bit just as a starter hole. There's one for you. All right. I'm moving guys anyway. Also, thanks for faster, but I don't want to rush. All right, so now we have our 4 starter holes. We're going to be using some 1/4" hardware. So we need a slightly larger than 1/4" clearance hole for these to go through. So that first small hole was just a starter hole. Now I'm going to go up just slightly larger in bit size, and in about 3 steps we'll work our way up to that 1/4" hole. However, since we now have the locations marked, we're going to switch around and drill from the backside, and that will be a lot easier. All right, 2 more. You can see what a difference having those starter holes makes. The larger sizes just go right through. All right, now we're using a 1/4 hardware. Those are 1/4" holes. We may need to go 1 size larger though, just for clearance. Let's see what we've got here. Well, actually it looks like that 1/4 hole is going to be just about perfect. All right, so here we go. For the first time, we've got our new shroud kind of mocked up on top of the existing keypad. I just have that one little F-clamp holding it in place right now. But rather than trying to mark things up, rather than trying to take a bunch of measurements, we're literally just going to clamp it in place, and we're going to use those holes that we drilled as template holes, and we're going to drill right through those 4 holes into our new shroud on the back. And that way we don't have to worry about alignment or measurements or anything. So let me get my drill set up here. Now I'm going to go ahead and start my drilling as close to my clamp as I can. That will minimize the flexing of that 16 gauge sheet metal. All All right, so once we get our first hole, I am going to go ahead and take that 1/4 bolt, feed it through, and on the back side, we're going to use a flat washer and a standard nut, because this is just a mock-up assembly. When we do our final assembly, we're going to use a locking nut called a nylock. All right, we'll move on to our second hole. The bolt. And the washer and the nut. Nice done. Right, we're going to the side. Again, we might do of HC steel. All right, so side. And our last bolt. All right, and our last bolt. All right. So there is our mock-up. Now I plan to go grab the actual video doorbell unit, and we'll mock it in place and see how well it fits. And it is going to sit in this new shroud, something like this. Now, the two things I have to think about for access: the microphone and speaker are on the bottom, but the pin to gain access to pull the unit out for charging or service is on the top. Now, for the top, I think we're going to end up drilling a tiny little hole in our shroud so we can slide a little pin into the hole that will pop the unit out. So I'm more concerned about making sure that the microphone and the speaker have ample room down here on the bottom. So I'm going to hold this in position, get my little marker out, and I'm going to make some marks here. All right, so that's just about everything I should need to take this back to the shop, get the mounting plate mounted, and we should be ready for our first test run of the video doorbell. Now, there might be some questions out there wondering, where are the holes for the wires? I've actually gone with a Wi-Fi battery-operated doorbell camera. And several reasons for that right now. It is temporary. Long-term, I do plan to run through this stanchion. There is some conduit that actually goes back inside the gate area. I do plan to run an Ethernet cable. Now, Reolink, in addition to the Wi-Fi battery model, they also make an Ethernet connected PoE, power over Ethernet model. So long-term, this is going to be replaced with a wired connection. But that means for now, about 3 times a year, I will have to dismount this, put it on the charger, charge the battery back up, and put it back out here. So it is a little bit inconvenient in that it does have to be recharged, but it's super convenient for a quick and dirty install. I don't have to run any new cables. I don't have to dig any trenches. I don't have to run power to the unit. It's literally going to be just standalone. And then it will connect on just the other side of that rock wall. I do have a Wi-Fi node, a Deco X50 outside unit, so it should have no problems with the Wi-Fi connection. All right, so we've got the gate opening here. You can see here's where that doorbell is. Pardon the trash can and the tools. But as we come around, hopefully you can see right there is that Deco X50. That is an outdoor rated Wi-Fi mesh network hub. Let the gate clear out of the way. And there you go. All right, for mounting the back plate that the camera doorbell fits into, we're going to be using some number 6 machine screws with some normal nuts and some split ring lock washers. I would prefer to use nylocks rather than split ring, but this is what I have on hand, so we're going to go with it. Now, for a number 6 screw, we need to drill a 5/32 clearance hole. So we're going to pull back out. Let's go ahead and mock up in our little shroud exactly where this is going to go. All right, so holding that back plate inside of our shroud, right where I put those black marks earlier where we did the mock-up, I'm just going to use my black Sharpie and right in those 2 mounting holes. So now we have our marks, and because we're back in the shop, we're going to head over to the drill press. All right, so we have our 5/32 diameter drill bit in the drill press. We have our workpiece positioned. Let's go ahead. And that was easy enough. So we're just going to use technically a countersink bit, but we're just going to use it for deburring purposes. All right, so now we can take our plate, make sure we have the hole in the top, drop in our first bolt, put on our split lock washer, and then our nut. Honestly, we have enough bolt there. I was worried we'd be short. So I think we're going to go with a flat washer. All right, so let's try this one more time. So our number 6 bolt through the hole, a number 6 flat washer, number 6 split ring lock washer, and then our number 6 nut. Now I'm just going to finger tight that for now, and we'll go to our second bolt, get the hole lined up, and same thing again. Split ring lock washer, or excuse me, flat washer, split ring lock washer, and then nut. And there we are, all mocked up. Oh, I almost forgot one more thing. Now let's see if we can really zoom in for this one. All right, hopefully this isn't too shaky, but there was that pin access hole that I mentioned. You can see that tiny little hole right there. And we need an access hole in our shroud. So to accomplish this, I'm just taking one of the smallest little drill bits that I have. I like that because it's nice tool steel. I'm going to put it in that little hole. Hopefully you can see that little drill bit in that hole. And now with my finger, I'm just going to make it relatively level. And this is hard to do because I'm off angle compared to you guys. You guys have a better view than I do. Basically, I'm trying to line this up so I know where to drill my access hole. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. That's pretty close. I'm just going to put a little dot right there. So I know I marked a little bit to the left, so I'll drill slightly to the right of my little black mark. All right, let's close things out. This is already getting way too long. So here you can see this is the final installation of the video doorbell. Now let's go ahead and cut to what it actually looks like on my phone now. So remotely from anywhere, I can now see footage. People can contact me. In fact, I'm not even in Texas as I'm doing this final edit. I'm 1,000 miles away. And that is what you're seeing on screen right now. That is a live view of the relayed video on my phone. Now, let me go ahead and zoom in a bit. I know right now I'm just capturing the whole phone screen. Down at the bottom, you can see the playback button. There's a quick reply feature. You can have like recorded audio excerpts. You hit the button and it plays through the video doorbell speaker. But if we zoom in, you'll get a kind of a better view of what the video quality looks like. And I did go ahead and hit that playback button. I wound it back about 2 days, and I'm going to show you some video that it recorded of a Amazon delivery. So, world of difference for me now. Anybody that needs to reach me can just drive up to the gate. They can push the doorbell button. If I'm available, that automatically alerts my phone, and I can initiate a two-way conversation. If I'm not available, there's also a timeout feature. After 15 seconds, it will just announce a pre-recorded message that I've loaded, and it tells them my cell phone number so that they can reach out and contact me that way. So now I finally have a way for, non-expected visitors to at least be able to reach out and contact me. All right, I know this was a long one. My apologies, I didn't mean it to be, but have a great rest of today and an even better rest of your week. Cheers, everybody.